Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media, 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Devin Hassan, who's the sports editor for our papers out in Rowlett and Mesquite, as well as Kendrick Johnson, who's the sports editor for the McKinney Courier-Gazette. And gentlemen, let's talk some football. You know, we're going to kind of shift gears for the rest of the month and just kind of focus pretty solely on the gridiron. You know, I should just kind of clarify, in the coming weeks, we're going to unveil our spring football primer series, starting next week. You know, for the next, through the end of the month, we're going to focus on our 6A and 5A football districts, kind of give you all kind of a bit of insight as just kind of where our programs are at in the midst of their off seasons. But beforehand, guys, I wanted to focus on another part of the football off season, something that's become a bit more prominent in recent years, has kind of really taken on a much larger space in the Texas high school football landscape, and that's 7-on-7. 7-on-7 really does kind of begin in earnest this weekend, at least within the Metroplex, with the start of the we've already got one state qualifying tournament in the books, but starting this week out in Grapevine, it's the start of a run where we got like a month, 5 weeks straight of nothing but state qualifying tournaments, and we're gonna have teams from all throughout the Metroplex competing in these, trying to take a shot at getting to state. And just kind of in the as 7-on-7 begins to further pick up steam, wanted to take this time just to kind of just discuss 7-on-7 in general, kind of what it's become, what these programs kind of take away from it, what the pros and cons to it are, and just what it's kind of its importance within the football offseason. I mean, there's a bunch of different theories, a bunch of different schools of thought for just how important 7-on-7 is, whether it's for the players, coaches, us as spectators, media members. When you guys are out at a 7-on-7 state qualifying tournament, what is it that you're kind of looking for?
Well, I mean, it really just depends on the individual aspect of it. As far as if it's a state qualifying tournament, really from a coverage standpoint, you're just trying to chase down as much as you can. Yeah. Whereas at the state 7-on-7 tournament, you have a chance to focus a little bit more. It's not so much the wins and losses, and I don't think that's. I mean, every team wants to do that. I just think that since the coaches are not directly involved, they're bystanders themselves. They're looking for things outside of wins and losses. Yeah. They're looking for how their team reacts to a situation, how their kids are behaving. Little things like that. For anybody
who's never seen 7-on-7, it is the complete opposite from what you see, during the fall. It's a great outlet, to develop your skill positions, your quarterbacks, your receivers, your defensive backs. The rules are a little bit different. Contact is obviously, largely discouraged. It is essentially a game of two-hand touch, and there's no pass rush or anything like that. But it does at least give you a chance to, to kind of further develop the rapport between quarterbacks and receivers, which, depending on where your program is at, if you have a brand new signal caller behind center, that can be some very valuable time as he develops chemistry with his receivers. Some teams are very active in the state qualifying tournament circuit, even though we don't cover this school. Arlington Lamar. I mean, I think 7-on-7 is one of the centerpieces of their offseason. Every single year, they're competing in every single SQT that they can. Whereas you have programs like McKinney ISD, for example, Kendrick, where you might get McKinney High in a state qualifying tournament or two, but for the most part, they kind of keep things kind of in house, more or less.
They have a little thing that they play each other. Like 1 week North will play McKinney and they'll play Boyd, and next week Boyd will play both, and they kind of cycle through. And it's kind of like a local thing, but like you alluded to earlier, I look for mainly quarterbacks, receivers, and DBs, and see if people can actually cover, if somebody can actually spin it, because you can kind of see if you're struggling at 7-on-7, you ain't gonna be able to do it on Friday nights. And then little things like, kid you not, last year I'm watching McKinney play. This guy drops 2 bombs. He shook everybody. Boom. He dropped the same bomb in the McKinney Boyd Crosstown Showdown. True story. So little stuff like that. It seems like it's a mental things that make a big deal in the big picture.
Well, and it's just a little hit, because I'm going to date myself here. Okay. But you're talking about the evolution of the game. Last year was the 20th anniversary, I guess, of when the 7-on-7 started, and that first tournament had 16 teams.
You were there?
No, no. But if you look back at that time frame, a lot of coaches simply weren't interested, because a lot of the teams that were winning state championships then were running the wing T, the option. They did not, and I remember back talking right around that time frame. Yes, I was around about that time. The only team that I covered in the Garland Mesquite area that actually ran a pass-oriented offense with South Garland, and that was Ronnie Thompson, who was the head coach out there. And Ronnie Thompson is kind of one of the pioneers of the spread offense. In fact, he was running it back in 1980. When he was at Port Arthur Jefferson. Man. Well, his quarterback at Port Arthur Jefferson was Todd Dodge. So, and when Todd Dodge took over to South Lake Carroll and they had that dominant run through the mid-2000s, the spread was already growing. But when South Lake had that amount of success, the spread it went like wildfire. Everybody tried to copy that plan. And that's when I think you really saw the rise in 7-on-7, because once they started running these pass-happy offenses, they really saw the benefits of getting those extra workouts during the summer.
Interesting. It's also, I mean, you guys mentioned just kind of the chemistry aspect of this, and I think the fact that you can't have coaches participate in 7-on-7, like you said, they're just bystanders. I think it is also kind of neat just to see how the kids kind of respond to when there isn't a coach there to kind of rein them in, and you get to see kind of where the leaders kind of show out and step up, and just see how kids kind of handle because I mean these kids are competitors.
I laugh at the communications. Like you'll see the coach in, and all of a sudden you see this, and you see certain play call, and then and then all of a sudden you see
because they can't do anything.
You see the freestyle communication, because like the quarterback all the time. It's like how you see everybody like look over. You don't see it that dramatic, but you see the quarterback every time he got his head. So it's just funny how the communication signals go. But I know some schools, not necessarily the ones in McKinney, but in this area, will use that to be able to get that up tempo. So because if you have a talented enough quarterback, he needs whatever hand signals or whatever, and they start working on that, and it's perfected by the time they get to district play. And then that's how you see them never want to huddle. They got the hand signals because the quarterback's got that down, and his receivers better have it down or they ain't gonna be out there. So I know that's kind of alluding to what Devin said, that's the evolution of the spread now, especially with the up tempo, because it went from just spreading people out and throwing to now it's like I want to say compare basketball 7 seconds or less is like that quick corner get boom, and you can do that in 7-on-7.
And a lot of teams run a lot of the same pass concepts, route trees and stuff that they do during the season. There are some programs that just have like 7-on-7 specific offenses and whatnot, but I was thinking, like I noticed like last time, like as far as if you're in our standpoint, you're trying to find what skills are kind of translatable to the fall, like what can you truly extrapolate from watching 7-on-7, and things like I just think of when I was covering Plano Senior last year during 7-on-7, and you see little wrinkles that you just kind of file away for later on. Like watching 7-on-7, it became pretty apparent that Plano's top receiver Caleb McAvoy was going to be an absolute monster in jump ball situations, because you could just see how that kind of bears out in 7-on-7, and that's one of those things that the rules aren't restrictive enough to where they don't discourage contact entirely, but if you have two players going up for a jump ball, player comes down with it, then it seems conceivable that that's something that could carry over. Plus the way that they use their because it's just, you can't, obviously your running backs participate in this too, but obviously they're used as receivers, but
like a check Kumi,
Kyron Cumby, that was the first time I had seen Kyron Cumby as a receiver, because obviously he's lining up in the slot there, and you see just how, like, obviously anybody who's seen him play running back knows how just dangerous he is in space.
Legit kid.
But in 7-on-7, just watching just how easily he was able to they would just run some short stuff with him that we'd expect out of a slot receiver, but once he gets in space, his ability just to break things wide open was just like, wow, like this Plano might actually be able to use something with this because of just how effortless he was making it look as a receiver. And sure enough, there were times this season where they plugged in Cumby as a slot receiver, and he wound up leading the team in receiving yardage.
Yeah, he does the team in receiving and rushing.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
It's similar to what Curtis Williams, who just graduated from over at West Mesquite. He was the sophomore of the year as a running back, but through their 7-on-7 workouts, he really kind of emerged and showed his talents just as that little slot receiver. And so that's something that they really incorporated. In fact, they actually moved him to wide receiver full time at one point during that 2 years before realizing, no, we need you back in the backfield. But that was something that they kind of saw in 7-on-7 and were able to fine tune for the fall, and it really helped him out because I think he ended up leading them in receiving.
Oh yeah, so. And if you can add that extra element to your offense, if you can take, like I said, Curtis Williams, Kyron Cumby, your most dangerous playmaker, and throw just a different wrinkle, just something to where you got to keep that defense guessing just how he's going to be used. it can only serve you better going forward.
On the defensive standpoint, you can kind of see people can cover, but one thing that's very underrated is kind of like Devin said, you see how the kids act.
Yeah.
because I'm not trying to throw his name out there, but the guy that dropped the ball had a bad attitude, and it came back and cost McKinney in the crosstown showdown. So it all transpires. Like, you think, oh, they're just playing 7-on-7 in July. And then in November, from the 10,000 people, guy had like 8 or 9 touchdowns, hits him in the hands, and then that one play just shifted momentum in that game, and it's a classic game. So forever, McKinney's gonna be remembered as that guy. But you saw remnants of it in July, which is kind of crazy that it goes all the way back, that it all added up.
And that's what, when I went down there a couple of years ago to the state event, there are college guys out there watching, college coaches are out there just kind of checking out. They understand this is not real football. Yeah. They're not out there trying to judge your, I mean, obviously you can kind of see what kind of athlete the guy is, but again, they're looking at the attitude. That's all they're looking at. When a guy drops a pass, how does he come back and react in the huddle? If a quarterback throws an interception, they don't care how he acts when he throws a 50-yard bomb for a touchdown. They care how he acts, coming back, getting the team rallied after an interception on both sides of the ball. Those are what those college coaches are looking at.
Yeah, I would say Bills. Man, nobody look at what they do.
Yeah.
One thing about 7-on-7 that I always enjoy is when you get to see the private schools and kind of how, like, because when you think of programs like Prestonwood or Fort Worth All Saints relative to like these giant 6A public schools, I feel like if there's any area where the gap between 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 just it could not be more more irrelevant is just when you see programs like Prestonwood just going blow for blow with just the absolute juggernauts, and because that's like, it's crazy because Prestonwood, first off, Prestonwood's already qualified for state. They were one of the 3 state qualifiers at the Frisco SQT, last was it earlier this month, and then so yeah, I mean, but with Prestonwood, obviously because again there's no line play, you don't really, the size isn't as big a factor if it's just literally skill positions. And Prestonwood's got solid skill position players every year, but just watching them just go up and down and trade haymakers with these programs that, in the fall that would, would run them off the field most likely. Like Prestonwood, they beat South Lake Carroll last year. They've gone blow for blow with DeSoto. They lost to the Woodlands by 1 point at state. So just because with the private schools, they're slotted into that Division I class with the 5A and 6A schools for 7-on-7 purposes. But I don't know, it's just like some funny little wrinkle just that you kind of notice that the private schools get to kind of test their mettle against some of the top prospects elsewhere in the state, teams that they won't get to see at all during the fall.
And used to, you get to see a smaller school like Salina, who was a small school power, take on these big. Now they've since gone to number 3 divisions now. It's been 2 just because the number of teams that they've as it kind of becomes more popular in the lower classifications. But yeah, that was always fun too because Salina had a 7-time state champion. But how often do they get to play Plano? And then Salina would always hold their own at those 7-on-7 events.
I saw we haven't mentioned a team like you mentioned kind of how every team has a kind of a different philosophy, and it does sound like it's kind of related to the coaches. I know for the longest time, like Louisville ISD, like Hebron was really the only program that consistently did 7-on-7 over the summer. But I just noticed in that Frisco SQT, you had a team like Marcus. First time I've seen Marcus in an SQT in forever. And then this Saturday out of Grapevine, you've got Louisville in there for the first time.
He's like, look what the wind blew in.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a coach's philosophy thing. I mean, Saxe has had one of the top passing offenses in the state for the last. I mean, Kit Myers, 3-year starter now at Utah State. Jalen Maiden, 3-year starter now at Mississippi State. I mean, these guys put up video game numbers, but you hardly ever saw them in an SQT. They play in a little citywide. They get in those little, one-day tournaments with Wiley and that group that's close to them. But that coaching staff, Coach Behrens and them, just have never really stressed, hey, we want you, we're going to compete in 2 or 3 SQTs. In fact, they've never even qualified for the state tournament because they've only, been in a handful of SQTs. But, so it depends on, I think they would rather have them doing other things in the summer.
Allen's kind of the same way. Allen hardly ever competes in SQTs. The last time that they did was in 2014, and that was more so at the behest of the players. This was back in the tail end of the Kyler Murray reign of terror. And they qualified for state, and obviously they're very good at 7-on-7, but it's just one of those things they just kind of preferred to keep it in-house. What they, kind of an aside on Allen, one thing that they did a few years ago, and I believe this was right at the tail end of Coach Tom Westerberg in his last year with the program, they had, entering that offseason, they had 4 quarterbacks between varsity and JV, and it's Allen, so you'd expect. There's a ton of kids within the program that were playing in 7-on-7. So what they did is they just played 7-on-7 amongst, one another. And the way that they went about splitting up teams was that they held a fantasy draft. They decided they let the 4 quarterbacks be the captains, and then they legit went and had like a snake-style fantasy draft where they just picked among the receivers, DBs, linebackers, running backs, and those were the teams for the summer. So let's see. We'll have, there will be state qualifying tournaments, in the coming weeks. We get asked all the time, what do you guys do during the summer once schools are out, because there's nothing going on. Well, at least for June, we're going to focus a lot of coverage on 7-on-7. So we'll be out and about at the various SQTs, and once it'll all culminate, at the end of June, the 28th through the 30th, at the state tournament, which is down in College Station. Do you have something?
And also, I'll be running around through the Star local readership area, so you might see me popping up at a school near you.
So then one of the, obviously one program that, is pretty, I believe Frisco Lone Star does some 7-on-7, if I recall. One of the key pieces to Frisco Lone Star's success last season was the emergence of stud wide receiver Marvin Mims. And Kendrick, this was the subject for our Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight. Kendrick was out and about, chatted up Marvin Mims just to kind of get a catch-up on his offseason, how the Rangers are coming along, and we'll check in and see what Marvin had to say after a word from the sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media, 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news.
Kendrick Johnson coming to you once again. This time we're in Frisco at Lone Star, home of the Rangers, with their star junior wide receiver, Marvin Mims. Marvin, give us some insight to your offseason and getting all these offers.
Well, the recruiting process for me has been overwhelming. After a good season last year, going 4 rounds deep, I didn't really expect it to be like this. But ever since January, I've had a lot of coaches calling me during the open period and offering me and coming to look at me, inviting me to their junior days.
The fact that you're on people's radar from a scouting standpoint and from like other teams going to be gunning for you this year, how much is that motivating you going into your offseason and getting ready for next season?
Really in the offseason I have to work harder. Last year we had Kirby and MJ. So those guys were mostly game planning on Kirby and MJ and how they run and stuff, so I just get let loose. But now the teams are going to be gunning on me and DJ, so I have to make plays for myself, and I really depend on them to make plays for me.
How much confidence do you have the fact that people have confidence in you that you're going to be that guy and make plays for this team next year?
Confidence is never really a problem. There's some plays you make, some plays you don't. You just got to get back up and keep playing. Game's up and down, so you just got to keep your head throughout the whole thing.
How much motivation do you have after coming so close to almost getting to that regional final and playing against Legacy last year? Do you want to rematch against them? I ask you straight up. Do you want to rematch against Legacy?
Yeah, I love playing against Legacy again. It was a good team that got us at the beginning. I feel like if they didn't get that hot start, I think we would have came out at the end. A couple mistakes on our hand. But I feel like we should have won that game, and we'll get another chance this year.
How much motivation do you have off of that, knowing that even though they beat y'all definitely can beat them, and y'all definitely on that level? Is that something y'all talk about here, or just like y'all just put that in the past and y'all focus ahead?
Pretty much we put it in the past, but we have a lot of returning people from varsity last year. I know it hasn't lost their mind as we go into the season next year, play Highland Park the 3rd game, and we get into the playoffs. We know what it's like. We have experience, so it'll be good for us. How
big a deal is to be that second team in Frisco history to go to that Texas Bowl?
It's a really big deal. Being the only team in Frisco, that's really big. So just try to get better as it goes on.
Does it feel good? Do y'all take pride in being the best team? With the fact that y'all district, everybody's Frisco, y'all see everybody at least once a year. The fact that y'all the top dogs in this city, is that something y'all talk about, or y'all focus on the bigger things?
Coach Rayburn always talks about district championship. If we get hype off of district championship, that's kind of the standards for us. It's not the standards for us. District championship is something that we expect ourselves to do, and as we walk around the city with the Lone Star shirt, they know who we are, so it's really important to us being the best school out here.
How much pride do you have to be part of the Lone Star football program?
Lone Star football program is like no other program. The things we do in the off season, they get us prepared for the season. The coaches we have, it's just special here.
Give us some insight to the hard work y'all been putting in to get ready for next season, because y'all practice, man. Y'all going at it like it's September already.
Yeah, that's how we do it. Defense, offense. We have a new offensive coordinator coming in, so we have to learn a new offense. And with that, the defense is picking up on us with their old stuff. So it's like, we have to find a way to adjust with the new things that we learn. And it's really hard, but I think we're trying to get a hang of it.
How cool is it to be playing home games at the Star, home where the Cowboys practice, and have something like you can tell your kids in the future?
Playing at the Star, it's honestly such a blessing. We get in late October, starts getting cold and all that stuff, and we just playing at the Star. So like playing there is like nothing else, you know, temperate, real nice turf, just a nice area.
That's something you're gonna tell your kids and stuff as you get older. The fact that you played there, like
yeah, that's definitely special. That practice facility is crazy.
Get some insight to the support, because like you kind of touched on earlier, it's like expected for y'all to be things. It's not like wished upon.
Yeah, I mean, we have high expectations here. You know, ever since that 2015 team went to the state championship, everything from then on, it's just been state championship, state championship, state championship. And with last year's team, I feel like we had the team to do it. You know, I honestly believe that was the best team to come through Lone Star. We just had to put some pieces together, and we made some mistakes, but that's on us.
What do you say to those people like that see you play? Like, yeah, he can play. He's fast, but he's too little.
I mean, honestly, it's not really about how big you are. You know, I mean, I'm working on it, but it's just about how much heart you have, how much you want to get the job done, and the technique you have to get the job done. That's really all that matters. So
somebody's never seen you play. Give us a scouting report on yourself.
I mean, I'm quick out of my breaks, real fast, deep threat. You know, offensive weapon.
I looked at your huddle highlights and stuff. Would it be safe to say that you kind of have a game similar to Ryan Broyles that played for Oklahoma a couple years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's real simple. You know, be able to run deep, run fast. You know, run by people. You know, there's going to be a point where there's going to be people just as fast as me, and I feel like I'm ready for that with the amount of breaks I do and all that stuff, just like in camps. You know, they have athletic guys out there too, and that technique just builds up on that athleticism, and that does nothing but help.
So what's 2 or 3 things you're going to add to your game that we didn't see this year that you're going to be working on over the summertime to show us once 2018 kick off in August?
This year I'm going to have to add some route running. You know, teams are going to be gunning for me. I have to be able to make moves on one person and go to the next person and make a move on them. So that's really important, as I'll have, you know, safety stacked up and all that type of stuff. Just being able to make plays for my team.
I know you worked hard to build this level, but when you hear your names listed as one of the best receivers, not only in this area, but in the state of Texas, how much pride do you have in that? Or do you something you just kind of tune out?
I mean, it's so much pride, you know, all the hard work I've done, not only for football, but just athleticism-wise, you know, all the years I've spent playing sports, and it's finally paying out, so it's really blessed, really grateful.
So you taking on the challenge, like, you know, like next year, every time you see a Lone Star scouting report, you're going to have players to watch. Marvin Mims.
Yes, sir. That's amazing.
And give us some insight to this program. You kind of touched on earlier about how, like, everybody, like, it's hard work and everybody does their thing. But what's some things, like somebody that to see y'all play on Friday nights, what's some things that you would like to know about this program that makes it special that we don't see, that other than y'all winning on Friday nights?
I mean, things that fans don't notice on Friday nights is that it's really hard to win a football game, you know. You have to have everyone from the offensive line to the receivers to the running backs to the quarterbacks collectively working as one. Because with that offense, you know, if everyone's not working as one, it's not going to be as productive. And they really don't see how hard we work on a daily basis here at Lone Star, you know, the morning lifts and all that stuff. So I guess, like, all the hard work is really hidden, and you just go out Friday nights and just have fun.
Talk about Ranger Nation and all the support that y'all have. Like, they're rowdy in every sport y'all do, especially football.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy here, you know. The school is really big on football. You know, Texas high school football, it's really big out here. So just having the school support and Frisco support, you know, when we make it a couple rounds deep and no one else is playing, you know, people from Frisco come to our games, like parents and stuff, just knowing that we have the ability to go farther than any other team.
On a personal note, give us some insight to your top 5. What's your top 5 on your list right now?
Right now I have Arizona State, Texas A&M, Arkansas, TCU. You know, those are special to me as coaches have come out to see me and all that stuff, and it's just really important.
Hey, Star Local definitely supports you and all of our athletes in the area. Will you give us a heads up when you make that decision so we can break that news?
Yes, sir.
And last but not least, just give a shout out to anybody you want, to your friends, your family that supported you. Cause I know you got a lot of support to get on this big stage and do what you do.
I mean, yeah, they've always been there from the start. You know, people that have, you know, grinded with me, the people here that have grinded with me ever since middle school, and that's very important to me. You know, just then we were all just little kids playing football. Now that I've made it, I want them to make it so we can make it together. That'd be really important to me.
How far is it? I can tell you take this very serious. How much is it to mentor these younger guys so they keep them going? Because I saw you talking to a lot of the young. Most guys, they do their thing and they put in their work, but the folks don't know what they got to do. I can see you like embrace the mentorship.
Yeah, right now it's really not about this year. You know, it's about the future of Lone Star football. And with those younger guys, you have to have some leadership, some mentorship to teach them the ropes. You know, teach them how it goes. And not being able to do that in the game, you have to be able to do it in practice when those guys are there, watching your every move and doing all that stuff. Set a good example.
Yeah, I heard it from my man Marvin. Get ready to watch those Rangers get ready for next year. Kendra Johnson rapping my man Marvin Mims here in Frisco, signing off for the Fast Forward Rewind.
Thanks again to Marvin Mims for taking the time to chat with Kendrick for the Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight. So, gentlemen, to round out our discussion on 7-on-7, kind of a primer for the weeks ahead as 7-on-7 really gets going in earnest this weekend. I think the age-old question when it comes to 7-on-7, and it's kind of large-scale importance for fans and whatnot, is okay, but does this really mean anything relative to the fall, or is this just a way to keep kids busy during the summer? And like I said, there's plenty of different schools of thought for just how important 7-on-7 can be relative to 11-on-11. Do you guys have any stance one way or another on kind of where y'all fall in that equation?
Little things, like you said, attitude. You see what people are conditioned was like. Those coaches will know, hey, we see you lacking, or we see that you keep doing what you're doing, or hey, we need you to do more so you can hit the ground running. Timing with the receivers on the offense, especially if you plan on having an explosive offense, you need your quarterback dialed in. And then you might get somebody you didn't know could do something, like he was talking about. What team was that they switched the guy to receiver?
West Mosquito?
Oh, yeah, West Mosquito.
You get something like that. So you got you another toy that you didn't even know that you had in the spring. So a lot of that stuff all adds up. It's not like a huge thing, but there's a lot of little things come in handy if you're trying to win championships.
But if you're asking about the correlation, and I don't have to single out any coach in particular, because every coach I've ever talked to has said the same exact thing. There is absolutely no correlation. It's not real football. He said we talked about the benefits. There are good things out there. Their main concern over 7-on-7 is none of my guys get hurt. Yeah. Y'all go out there, you build that bond, you have fun, you stay in shape, but avoid injuries, and but when it comes down to it, even teams that have gone on to the state tournament and even placed one or even placed second, you come back and you ask the coach afterwards, and they say, it's nice for the kids, it's always great to win, anytime you get to go out there and compete, it's good, but it doesn't matter at all when it comes down when we start 2-a-days a month from now.
I went through a handful of years ago and did kind of a study or so on Plano ISD and just kind of what, over a 10-year sample, the years then when they made state in 7-on-7 versus the years they didn't, what happened later on in those respective seasons. And the data was all over the place. Yeah. You had a program like Plano East, which, the data was actually pretty consistent with what you would, I guess, maybe want to expect out of something like that, where the years that they went to state, they averaged about 7.5 wins total. On average, I should say. And then in the years when they didn't go to state, they averaged 3.5 wins. So you can see, it's a bit more clear cut there. But then, you went to a program like Plano, and the gap closed a bit more. And then with West, it was almost 50-50. Yeah. So,
well, I think, when I say there's no correlation, I mean no direct correlation. Yeah. Certainly, these programs, these large programs with a lot of great athletes, are going to be good at 7-on-7 because they have a lot of great athletes. But again, just the direct causation, I guess correlation is not.
It's like Plano East offensive coordinator Brad Bailey had. I'm just looking back over the story. He had a pretty good way to summarize it. It just kind of depends on where your program is at. Like Plano East, in their first year under Joey McCullough, they were coming off a 1-9 season after that first year under Coach McCullough, and they just needed to find just something to help just kind of build and further instill some sort of a winning mentality within the program. So we're just going to see 7-on-7 as just another chance to do that. Yeah. Whereas, years later, when all those players were seniors, you're not as concerned. These kids all know each other. There's plenty of chemistry there, and a setback in 7-on-7 is really not going to be the end of the world for these kids. But it just kind of depends on where your program is at. I did go back just for the sake of, another bit of a comparative study, looking back over the last 10 years within the Division I state 7-on-7 tournament, what how the 7-on-7 state champion and the state runner-up did that following season in football, just to see again if there is any sort of consistency there with what those teams who had success, advancing to the final, to the championship game in state 7-on-7, what happened later on in the year. The results you can kind of take from it what you want. There was only one state champion over the course of the last 10 years, and that was Lake Travis in 2010.
And who was that quarterback?
Who was it? That was back in the the 5 straight or whatever that they had. There is a little consistency though in that the past three state Division I state champions, I should say, for 7-on-7, all 3 have been the state runner-up during the fall. You had Lake Travis this past season, Austin Westlake, I should say the Woodlands in 2016, and Austin Westlake in 2015. So there is at least kind of a running theme now that if you win state 7-on-7, there's at least a recency of a team getting to the state title game. But you had, of those, like I said, it was the state champion, the state runner-up over the course of 10 years, 20 total teams. 17 of the 20 teams made the playoffs. The only teams that didn't were White House 2014, Cy-Fair 2009, and sorry, Devin, Mesquite 2008. And then you had 8 of those 20 teams went 4 rounds deep. 12 of those 20 teams went 3 rounds deep, and 3 teams only went one and done. Katy Seven Lakes 2014, Plano in 2012, and Richland in 2008. So
man, you did a lot of research, man. You got your own Alliance Borough.
I had time to prep today. But, so you kind of see that it's there's at least enough of a 60% of those teams wind up going at least 3 rounds deep, which 3 rounds deep constitutes a solid playoff run. For your typical program. So
basically, if you ball in the spring, don't mean that you're gonna ball in the fall with a count.
Yeah. But again, like we just kind of have intimated, that just kind of depends on where your program is at, all in all. So yeah, we'll see what's to come. So like I said, 7-on-7 begins in earnest this weekend. We got an SQT out in Grapevine on Saturday. A handful of teams from our market's going to be out there, and we've got other ones. I just wrote them down. We have Hearst is actually a big player in as far as hosting these tournaments. The Hearst area is going to host an SQT on May 26th, and then later on June 16th. Northwest up in Justin, they host one on June 9th, and then Rowlett, Devin, hosts one June 22nd.
So always one of the more wheels off SQTs.
Wow, watch out.
So yeah, we'll see if just how many teams we have headed to College Station in about in about 6 weeks' time. But yeah, in the meantime, then that's just kind of a look at some 7-on-7. Like I said, next week we're going to really hit spring football in earnest, preview our 6A and 5A districts. We're going to focus Mondays on 6A, Thursdays on 5A. So we hope that y'all will give those a look. Otherwise, folks, this has been Matt Welch with Star Local Media. Devin, Kendrick, appreciate y'all for tagging along. Folks, y'all enjoy the rest of your week. We will talk to y'all later. Thanks again to our sponsors, Star Local Media, 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news.